Hello class, this is Mr. DeVoe-Peterson. Let's take a quick look at Chapter 8 where we just discuss some of the basic security fundamentals or frameworks that we need to know about in wireless networking. And we start out by just realizing that we could run wireless networks with no security, but when we do that, we might end up with some problems because that leaves us vulnerable to eavesdropping and other issues, bad actors on the internet, especially in public spaces. So let's look at some things we've done in the past. And the chapter just brings it up because you may run into it. That's, the SSID hiding, the wireless network name, the hiding of it so people can't see it. Though with the right software, you can see it. And then you can actually filter what MAC addresses on your network card of the wireless device are allowed on the network, basically, and lock it down to just family members or employees or something like that. But that's vulnerable because of MAC address spoofing and so forth. And one of the earlier implementations of security for the wireless network would be WEP, or wired equivalent privacy. That's been hacked early on. It's not considered secure. So these are methods that they're out there. They're legacy. Hopefully you don't run into them anymore. Some more current frameworks or techniques for security on the wireless medium would be using a passphrase instead of a number that can easily be hacked. User-based authentication. You enter in your own your information, name, logon name, and password. And then we get into more enterprise level security with Radius and the AAA and EAP. So we'll get into that. Some threats we need to think about. If you're just surfing and looking up things on the internet and not even getting into email, not getting into banking, then you're not really a target for folks that might be lurking out on the internet trying to get your information. But the minute you log into a bank account or your email, then that's something you need to worry about, because with that information, bad actors can take over your credit cards and things like that. So here's some things that can happen: the eavesdropping or the denial of service attacks, address spoofing for your MAC address, man-in-the-middle attacks, changing information, changing your password midstream as you enter it, intercepting it and changing it to something that they know and that later you don't know. So, and encryption hacking. So here's the internet. Here are you. You're the good guy on the left. There's the bad guy on the right. And these are all things that can happen, right? Eavesdropping, encryption, all those splendid things in life. So let's look at SSID. That is the name for the wireless network. And what happens is that information is broadcasted 10 times a second. So it's out there and easy to see. So sometimes a technique that early on we thought would kind of keep users safe would be to hide it. With Kali Linux, some of you know about that already. That can still be found if it's not broadcast. MAC address filtering. This is showing you the interface where you can put the MAC address, log them here in this table, and then only those systems could get on the network. That can be spoofed. We talk about it right there. WEP encryption is not recommended anymore. I doubt you'll run into it. It shouldn't be used. And then we get into the enterprise stuff. So, and that's where we get into, and these are some terms you might see test-wise: is robust security network, temporal key integrity protocol. This is a long one. Cipher block chaining message authentication code protocol. These are protocols. They are frameworks. They are techniques to keep your information encrypted and safe. When you're setting up your Wi-Fi, you might see things like WPA2, personal versus enterprise, and enterprise would indicate that there's a central database that has the user's credentials, that is the username and password stored somewhere. And if you weren't set up ahead of time, like a company would do for employees, as someone that can get on the network, then you couldn't set up a new account with a logon and a password. So that is more enterprise level. Though you do see some small office, home office. I've seen it advertised, some of the routers, network Wi-Fi units, where it has a built-in database or table. It's not quite enterprise level, it's more consumer, but so I wouldn't trust it. Pin-based or push-button setup is to get something added to the wireless network by pushing a button. You get a pin, you enter it. Not recommended. We're going to skip past that. And now we're getting more into the security things you might see when you're setting up your network, and that's WPA2, personal security, where you put in a passphrase with upper, lower digits and numbers and symbols, dollar signs, at symbols, things like that. The longer the better, the more secure. It could be, you could do something as simple as take a sentence out of a book and take the third letter in every word, and then you could go to that book and find the sentence, and you would know what the password would be by looking it up, right? Those are techniques you might use, but it should not be a password that you use, like on your email and bank account. It should be separate, something simple, not the name of the router, or not the name of the network, something complex. And then we get into enterprise. Now, enterprise, the big difference is that there's a centralized database that stores the user information. Who is allowed to get on that network? And there's got to be some frameworks discussed here. Here are some terms you'll probably see on a test, and that is the client. You getting on the network would be the supplicant. In the middle, the intermediary, the access point, if you will, is called the authenticator. It passes on your logon information to the central database, to the server, if you will, that authenticates, that is the correct password and logon. So then it sends it back to the authenticator that tells you you can get on. So here's a description of that. I'll let you read that. Here's some frameworks: EAP, TLS, PEEP, and FAST. Read them. They're just frameworks for how do you store that user authentication information. Don't let the terms frighten you. This is a concept that's big in security for networking, and that is the AAA, the authentication, authorization, and accounting. It's all integrated with radius servers that have central databases, enterprise-type security for getting on the network, and that is confirming your identity, authentication, that you are an authorized user on the database. And what are you authorized to get into? Well, how does that control? Well, in networking, you're added to groups. Maybe you're part of the personnel group, or you're the marketing group, which gets you access to certain folders and data to view and modify and delete and so forth. So your authorization to services on the network, if you will. And then finally, we need a log of what took place. Where did you go on that network, and what things did you do? So that's the accounting side of it. That's the logs that track what you did. Okay, WEEP's no longer used. Talks a little bit about TKIP, which is an upgrade from Wep security, which is not used anymore. And then CCNP, I highlighted some of the stuff. Hopefully you can see it on the network. Is used to replace CCNP used to replace TKIP. Why? It's a stronger encryption algorithm. That's why. That's all. These terms, they're new. They seem kind of interesting. Don't let them. Engineers like to come up with cool terms. That's why you're seeing why I have to memorize this. Yeah, just know that CCNP replaced it, TKIP. So what else? Role-based access based on your role in the organization. You get access to certain information. That's all it is. And VPN is kind of a big concept. Not as big as it. Now that security's gotten better, and that your websites auto forward to secure connections with HTTPS, though you may not see it in the browser window. So that keeps you safer. But if you are traveling, or if you're at a public Wi-Fi hotspot, then you may want to look at doing a VPN. And it talks about being layer 3 and layer 4 of the net OSI stack, the networking stack. Most of what we do now is at the this WPA is at the data link layer. So up the stack, you see VPN kind of puts your communication. It's a two-part process. It puts you through a tunnel in the network. It's a good illustration. But then that information's encrypted. So how is that encrypted? It's like putting one envelope inside of another envelope. You can't see the inside envelope. You can't only see the outside envelope. And that's kind of what encryption does, if that visualization helps. And let me jump back down here A lot of examples of setting up some of these configurations. Then we have, I'll get to it, wireless intrusion prevention system. So what that does is usually an appliance, a dedicated device in the network closet room that tracks communication coming to the organization and then flags it if it looks harmful. Maybe it's a distributed denial of service attack or something. It's a dedicated hardware device, sometimes software loaded on a server, but a device or service that's sole purpose is to track and look for this information coming at the corporate network and keeping it safe, stopping something from happening, reporting on it, those kind of things. So that's the wireless intrusion prevention system. This talks about what it does, and if you've got a highly volatile, sought-after network, then you'll have that set up. And it needs to be configured and maintained, so there's a lot of options for setting that up. I'll let you read it. And what else? Is that pretty much us? Oh, okay. Also, because networks have gotten so large, you have wired and wireless, and you have all the traffic, and you have multiple access points, and you need some central repository for that information to look at traffic, to look at bottlenecks, to manage that network. And all that is the wireless network management system. I use Ubiquiti, and it's kind of part of the process. It actually looks pretty good with the Ubiquiti equipment. It's their own secret sauce of managing the wireless network, and it does a pretty good job of doing that. You won't see that on the consumer-based products, but you will see it on enterprise-level products. And with the example I'm familiar with, we use in Ubiquiti, you can run the software on a server or a managed switch, in the case of my deployment, hardware on an appliance or cloud-based. And cloud-based, you're going to pay per device, right? And so if you have a lot of devices, it might make sense to do that, where maintenance and from tech support can handle things offline if they're not on the premises. Or maybe you have an IT services company that can get in and fix things for you because you don't have IT staff. Cloud-based might be the best example for that, how to handle that, monitoring the physical layer, and that's pretty much it. I'll stop there. I'm trying to make these reviews not too long. So again, remember, this is just using simple security, some of it legacy, some of the newer security. And personal use, WPA2, of course, is not a centralized database managing users and logon information. But when you move into the enterprise level, then you have that centralized database in the Radius server and those kind of pieces of hardware and equipment to manage users and what the users are getting into, right? So that's it. That's chapter 8. It's not a hard chapter. It's real basic information, but I wanted to make sure I shared that with you. All right. Good luck, everybody.